listening to The Trade Gods.
What's going on? Player Profiler faithful, happy Thanksgiving Eve.
Woo.
All the warm wishes to you and your families for Thanksgiving. I am Matty Kiwoom, joined by my fellow Trade God brethren, the morning man, Jason Allwine. What's going on, Jay? Happy Thanksgiving Eve.
Happy Thanksgiving Eve to you, man. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well as well.
Oh yeah.
And I'm excited to start breaking down some trades. Well, actually, we're not really going to be breaking down some trades, are we? We might be discussing some topics.
Yeah, tonight's episode, I'm glad you brought it up. It's a wee bit different. We have a very special episode. Maybe you're noticing the overlays here.
Yeah.
Made by Jason here with the shining bright 24-karat magic. But today, we're not going to break down trades. Today, we're going to just help our listeners, help all the Trade God listeners navigate through the toughest time of trade season. We're approaching trade deadlines. We're approaching the fantasy playoffs. And last Thursday night was catastrophic for a number of our team players out there, where you could have lost Joe Burrow. You could have lost Mark Andrews for the whole fantasy season. So we're going to walk you through a few replacements that we like for Burrow and for Mark Andrews. And then instead of a buy or sell, we are going to talk strictly targets. It's not necessarily buys, it's targets, players to target for your contending rosters that are, itching that closer to the playoffs. And then we're also going to give a few targets for the teams that are looking at 2024 and beyond. So you're going to want to stick around for that. It's going to be a great episode. So let's dive right on in. So as you can see here, we are going to start with some Joe Burrow replacements. Josh Dobbs, Russell Wilson, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields. So I'm going to kick it to you, Jay. Which quarterback would you like to start us off with?
We'll go with Josh Dobbs. Just because the Pastronaut is kind of the best story ever right now.
Best story in sports, hands down.
Yeah. Like this is this year's Brock Purdy. And it's just exciting to watch. And he's landed in Minnesota, which is, a system that has produced good quarterback play from Kirk Cousins, and now is producing good quarterback play from Josh Dobbs, who was also looking pretty good in Arizona. So, he's clearly a good quarterback. And since landing in Minnesota, he's averaged 22.6 points per game, which is just phenomenal. He's had rushing touchdowns in 4 straight weeks, so he's giving you that floor. And still, he's only finding himself around QB 16 in seasonal rankings. He's around that range in Dynasty now as well. And I think that, that's a player that you could get for not too expensive. His value has definitely kind of caught up to him. There's a lot of hype around him, but still based on the production you're getting, it's not quite like you're getting essentially Joe Burrow production and you're still not paying that name value, that price tag that you should for the type of production you're getting from him.
And one thing I will say about Dobbs, he's got a rushing floor that is just nice when it comes to fantasy football. He's had, I think, only one game under 40 yards rushing. So you're getting that 4-point blanket on top of everything, which is good to see. We haven't seen him get below QB 15 since week 6. So he's been consistent. He's been a good rusher of the football. And now he's in a system that could be getting Justin Jefferson right on back. So we love what we're getting here. I was actually lucky enough to get me some Josh Dobbs in a league where I lost Kirk Cousins. And I got the way the trade went down, I basically gave up a second-round pick and some whatever bench pieces. And I got Jalen Warren before he was named starter and Josh Dobbs. So
nice.
That should tell you right there that the opportunity to buy Josh Dobbs is still very much alive and well. And when you look at the rest of his play or the rest of the fantasy regular season, Chicago on Monday Night Football by Las Vegas. We like those matchups. All of those will be indoors, which again, we like for the rushing ability. And then in the playoffs, Josh Dobbs has some pretty decent matchups at Cincinnati, which is the 9th best for quarterbacks to give the 9th most fantasy points per game. Detroit and Green Bay. Green Bay might be the toughest. But again, it'll be at home. He'll have Justin Jefferson back. So I love me some Josh Dobbs for the remainder of the season. The quarterback that I would like to talk about is someone that we both pre-show mentioned, so we'll both probably have a thing or two to say about Mr. Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's coming off of back-to-back perfect games. I mean, he is pitching no-hitters, to use a baseball analogy. He's been absolutely dynamite. But what I love most about him, he has the sixth best playoff schedule amongst quarterbacks if you're using points per game surrendered to the position. So he's going to be in line for some really juicy matchups down the stretch. Arizona versus Baltimore, which I know Baltimore's been tough against QBs, but at home in a potential shootout spot, you like that. And then Washington, the number one matchup for opposing quarterbacks in the fantasy championships. Get right the hell out of here. And then when you look at his underlying metrics, which I would say that Brock Purdy is probably the most polarizing fantasy player in the game today. Half of the people say get rid of him, he's a bum. Half of the people say you're crazy, he's the best quarterback ever. I'm probably closer to the middle, but when I rattle off all of these stats, just know this: he ranks in the top 2 in the NFL in these stats: yards per attempt, air yards per attempt, fantasy points per dropback, deep ball completion percentage, play action completion percentage, clean pocket completion percentage, true passer rating, QBR, expected points added, deep ball catchable pass rate, passer rating versus man. The kid is getting it done. He's got Trent Williams back. He's got Deebo Samuel back. We saw what he's been able to do all year with Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. You can call it his weapons. You can call him mediocre. I don't care. Call him Mr. Irrelevant. I don't care. He is a producer of fantasy football points, and I don't see it stopping. So if you need to replace Joe Burrow, hopefully the team builder in your league that has Purdy is on the side where they think he's kind of out kicking his coverage, because then you could get him at a price that's reasonable. But I'm also willing to pay whatever the owner's price is to get a guy like Purdy on my team. What are your thoughts on Brock Purdy?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't have much to add to that at all. I mean, he had that cold streak when Trent Williams was out, when Deebo Samuel was out, when Christian McCaffrey was less than 100%. But I mean, now that they're healthy and now that they're making this playoff push, this San Francisco team is so dangerous. And to get the guy that's essentially calling the shots and commanding it all, I mean, you really can't understate it. And you talked about how good he's been the past 2 weeks. I mean, we're talking 3 touchdowns in back-to-back games. And a stat that I had found, he has the highest passer rating, like across the past 2 games. It's 157.3 in NFL history. Like, no quarterback has had as good of games back to back as long as that stat has been tracked. Like, just an absolutely phenomenal performance from him. And I mean, I can't see it slowing down. Like you mentioned the schedule. So yeah, get Brock Purdy. His value is never, like we talk about with Josh Dobbs, his value is just not going to match his production, just because half the people, like you said, just still don't believe in him.
We're going to keep it going, talking about the rest of the quarterbacks that you need to target if you lost Joe Burrow. But before we continue, let's hear from BetOpenly.
Hey, so many ask me, what's wrong with sportsbooks? Why so many of them fail? The answer is simple. They don't innovate. They're just casino sportsbooks on a phone. That's all they've been. There are a few that are doing a good job. We partner with them. Most of them, not so much. Until BetOpenly came along. BetOpenly said, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to do something groundbreaking. We're going to have peer-to-peer betting in all states, and you pay 1%. When you win, you pay just 1% on your winnings. You heard that right. It's 1%. With code UNDERWORLD, you qualify for just that 1% transaction fee on BetOpenly. It gives you ultimate flexibility to set your own lines and browse lines that others have set. Think about it. That's what betting should be, and now that is the reality. BetOpenly.com. The code is UNDERWORLD. Check it out.
Matty, Kiwoom, Jason Allwine. We are here for the Trade Gods episode, breaking down some quarterbacks that you got to target if you are in need because you lost Mr. Joe Burrow. So we talked about Brock Purdy. We talked about Josh Dobbs. Next on the list, Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've been touting Justin Fields all season. Yeah. He's shown flashes. We know his capabilities. Just put up another 100-yard game against the Detroit Lions rushing. What are your thoughts on getting Justin Fields?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly pre-show. I had been prepared all day to talk about Anthony Richardson in this slot. But then I decided, that's kind of a different conversation. And I was looking at values. And Justin Fields still, even after this bounce back game, is still undervalued. Like, people are just not sold on Justin Fields, whether it be his long-term tenure in Chicago. That's a question. Whether it be the fact that he can even be a franchise quarterback beyond just the rushing floor. That's in question. But we're still seeing so many flashes. And when you're seeing a guy QB 14 in Dynasty, QB 17 in seasonal, put up 21.2 fantasy points in his first game back from injury, having 100 rush yards, having 100 pass yards, revitalizing his number one target, your guy DJ Moore finally showing some life with Justin Fields back. I mean, this guy is a true NFL quarterback. He's extremely talented. And the value for, this is like, he was like a top 6 quarterback going into the season. And so top 8 maybe. And so it's just wild to see him fall this far. And so it means you've got to buy him. And why not, if you're trying to replace Joe Burrow, why not just get another Ohio State guy?
Oh, Buckeye Nation, big game this Saturday against your team, the Michigan Wolverines, right? You're a Wolverines guy, so you're out here touting Ohio State. The Wolverine crew would not be happy with you, Mr. Ryan. That's okay.
They have some good NFL players.
They have good NFL players. What can you do? I'm going to lump my 2 quarterbacks together, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray. Essentially, they both sit in the top 3 right now for the easiest playoff schedules going, in a couple weeks. And I think Russell Wilson you can get on the cheap, even in your super flex leagues. And I think Kyler Murray is going to cost you, but I think he's worth it because he'll have value that stands past just 2023. I don't believe that they do go the Caleb Williams, Drake May route. I do believe this is Kyler Murray's offense and Kyler Murray's team. So I'd be willing to pay up for them. But basically, to make it easier on our listeners, the reason why you should get these guys is because they have good playoff schedules. And if you're looking to, if you're still in the thick of it, you don't know if you're necessarily going to be in the playoffs, don't worry. Arizona has a couple of decent matchups. It's not as advantageous as the playoffs, but LA and Pittsburgh, both top 20 matchups. We're okay with that. And for Denver, Cleveland stinks. It hurts this week, so you might want to have a streamer ready for this week if that's the route you're going to go. But then Houston and LAC, the Chargers, in Week 14. So we like these matchups for both these quarterbacks. So I'm absolutely on board with all 5 of these guys: Josh Dobbs, Brock Purdy, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Kyler Murray. I would say probably your cheapest option is Russell Wilson, Josh Dobbs, then Purdy, and then Fields and Murray. It's going to cost you a little bit, but I'm okay paying them because I think they have value that is long. It's more than just the rest of the season. So even if you have to pay some future assets to get them for your title run, it's well worth it. So now we talked about the replacements for Burrow. Let's talk about who our listeners can target to get at tight end. Now, this was a fun one because we kind of both agree on a number of these tight ends.
Yeah.
So let's just go. There's 4 guys we're going to talk about: David Njoku, Trey McBride, Isaiah Likely, Evan Ingram. Jason, who do you want to talk about first?
I'll just start with Evan Ingram, as that's one of the ones that we not necessarily disagreed on, but one of the ones that we separately chose. So Evan Ingram, he's not scoring touchdowns, and that's extremely disappointing. And last week was also a bad performance, and that is not good to see coming out of the bye, and also with Zay Jones returning from injury. So that has brought his value down a little bit, but still very, very quietly, number 9 in points per game. He has the 3rd most targets, the 3rd most receptions among tight ends, and he's top 10 in points, juke rate, separation, yards after catch, yards, receptions, deep targets, routes run, target share, slot snaps, you name it. And especially, he's number 5 in expected points per game. And when you see number 9 in points per game, but number 5 in expected points per game, that's that progression, the positive regression that we always look for. And you want to find ways to attach yourself to good offenses. And Evan Ingram's a way to do that, and a way to do it at a position, the tight end, that's hard to find value in. So Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram, I love it. And if you can recall, in 2022, it was the end of the year, the regular season and the fantasy playoffs, in which he did go kind of cray-cray. So if he's a late finisher, a strong finisher towards the finish line, Evan Ingram could be your guy. I'm going to talk about David Njoku. David Njoku made my fantasy football market watch thread earlier this week. Actually, it feels like earlier this week. It was yesterday. It's just Wednesday. That feels like a Friday because of the holiday. Whatever.
Yeah.
But David Njoku is sneakily a top 12 overall tight end. He's had 5 straight weeks with 10-plus fantasy points. and he's finished with 10+ fantasy points 6 of the last 7. I love those type of floors at a position that can be completely nothing.
Yeah.
Even if, 10, 15 fantasy points, you might say, well, they're not tight end 1 weeks. Yeah, but at least you're not getting 3. It's not burying you in your matchup, and we need wins right now more than ever. But then when you look at some of his underlying metrics, they kind of support success, continued success at that. He ranks in the top 10 in EPA, dominator rating, targets, red zone targets, receptions, and he leads the NFL amongst tight ends in yards after the catch, which is the number one indicator for a good tight end, in my opinion, is that yak ability. He's coming off of a 15-target game with DTR, and DTR got that win. He'll be back at quarterback.
Yep.
Flacco gets annoyed at the new starting quarterback. We'll maybe have to reassess, but I don't see why he wouldn't continue to be a good option for this offense. So I'm looking to buy David Njoku. Anything you want to add on Njoku before you move on to the next tight end?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the 15 targets, right? I mean, that's awesome to see, especially with the quarterback change. And I agree with you, DTR. I think is honestly going to finish the season. I think Joe Flacco is more of an insurance because the backup position is the most undervalued position in the entire NFL. We see it time and time again. You need a good backup quarterback. And while Joe Flacco is a little washed, he's still a good quarterback. But either way, DTR targeted him 15 times this week, but also earlier in the year when he started against the Baltimore Ravens, his first career start, while David Njoku only had 46 yards, he was still the leading receiver on the Cleveland Browns. So we're talking about back-to-back weeks now with DTR as quarterback, weeks apart too. I mean, we're talking about week 11 and week 4 that this happened. Yeah. And yet DTR still locking on to David Njoku. And so, yeah, this is definitely a guy you need to buy. I think the targets will continue to be there. And I think DTR just likes the tight end. And to add on to it, I mean, you remember that a few weeks back when he burnt his face off at a bonfire and still went to play football the next day? I mean, dude is an absolute menace. He's a dog. And that is exactly what you want to see at tight end. So I love myself, David Njoku, if you will.
Yeah, well, he definitely popped on the toughness rating when the report was, we'll see if he could put a helmet on and we'll see if he could play. That is severe, but he played, and he played well. So, yeah, get David Njoku, and I think the price will be surprisingly affordable for you in Dynasty, redraft, what have you. And you might be looking at some good fantasy production from here on out, including the fantasy playoffs. So the next tight end we're going to talk about, Jay, take the floor. Talk about Trey McBride. Yeah, he's been a stud.
Yeah, before I go into metrics, can I ask you a question? Because someone asked this on Wake and Take this morning, and I went with McBride, but I'm curious your thoughts, and I'm surprised I went McBride, but would you rather have Trey McBride or Sam Laporta?
I would rather have Sam Laporta.
Okay.
I would rather have Sam Laporta.
Is it, like, close to you?
It's very close.
Okay, yeah, and that's what's surprising. Close. Like, this is just completely splashed on the scene. Mm-hmm. I think I'm a bit more confident in Trey McBride, if I'm going to be honest with you, that, a couple weeks ago, he had that fantastic catch against the Falcons where he just catches the underthrown ball from Kyler Murray to get him in full range. I mean, that's awesome to see. But still, the 14-target game with Josh Dobbs, he had 95 yards and a touchdown, and he hasn't slowed down with Kyler Murray. I already mentioned that catch against the Falcons, but 8 of 9, 131 yards, 21.1 PPR points. That was tight end 2 that week. Last week, he had 9.3 PPR points, but still, that was good for tight end 11. And just all season, even without Kyler Murray, top 5 in target rate, yards per route run, points per route run, production premium. I mean, he's hitting all cylinders. He was the first tight end taken in last year's draft. That's often forgotten about. I mean, he is a true prospect, and he's finally clicking. And I'm excited for him. I think that his value isn't, again, matching the production that you're going to get from him on an offense that we talked about with Kyler Murray is trending in the right direction, and I mean, only going to get better as the years go on. So, yeah, I love myself some Trey McBride.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I love Trey McBride. In my opinion, he's going to be the most expensive option of the guys that we're talking about tonight. But again, to get a tight end right now, a guy that you can use for years to come, it's worth the price in gold. It's worth its weight in gold. So get Trey McBride for all the reasons you mentioned. He looks like he's poised to really be good for the rest of the regular season. And let's check out his playoff schedule. What does he look like? Oh, I don't know. He's the 7th best matchups for the playoffs. So we love Trey McBride. And the last guy I'm going to talk about is Isaiah Likely. the guy who's going to be replacing Mark Andrews in the Baltimore offense could be the guy that you use in your lineup to replace Mark Andrews as well. And he hasn't been the set it and forget it tight end when Andrews has missed time as we thought he could be. But we like what we've seen in the past. He's been a productive member of the Baltimore Ravens offense. And what I love most about him is that a schedule to wrap up the regular season. So if you need wins to get in, he's got the Chargers this week, who's the 5th best matchup, and he's got the LA Rams in week 14, which is the 8th best matchup for opposing tight ends. So he's going to have a pretty soft schedule going into the playoffs. And then when he gets into the playoffs, it's still a top 10 matchup for the Baltimore Ravens, including some potential big-time scoring games. The Baltimore Ravens sees Jacksonville, San Francisco, and Miami in the playoffs. You could be looking at some big-time point outputs from both of these teams in each of these matchups. So I'm going to go with Isaiah Likely as my guy to potentially replace Mark Andrews in your lineup. One thing I will add to Isaiah Likely, it's not even about Isaiah Likely, but if you can pick up Charlie Kohler, pick up Charlie Kohler. Not that I think he'll be the guy that I want to start this week, but he's someone that you want on your bench. He was a mega producer at Iowa State. He was Brock Purdy's go-to receiver. He was one of my favorite tight ends in the class that was highlighted by Trey McBride. Big guy, kind of a donkey, but he's got great hands, and he was a mega producer at Iowa State. So if there's some situation where Isaiah Likely just isn't getting the job done, we did see Kohler get some time last week. We did see Kohler make some catches last week. Mm-hmm. So if you have some room to stash a tight end, stash Charlie Kohler.
I like that.
Now we're going to move on. We're going to pivot a little bit here. So we're talking about guys to target, to trade for if you've lost Joe Burrow, and then if you lost Mark Andrews. We got that as well. But next we are going to move to trade targets for contenders. These are the teams that have confidence they will be in the playoffs. So, Jason, who's the first player you would like to talk about?
Yeah, I'll go with Deebo Samuel just because I actually saw it in the chat. Are you buying the dip on Deebo Samuel? This is from Jonathan. So shout out, Jonathan. I am. And it's, I'm a little bit of a Deebo fanboy, but still it just comes to fantasy football markets in general. And at this point, this is the cheapest option on the San Francisco 49ers offense. I mean, Brandon Ayuk's been phenomenal. George Kittle's been splashing the past couple weeks. Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy's finally getting some respect. So if you want a piece, you can get Deebo Samuel, who in my opinion is still one of the better football players in the league. A very dynamic athlete. And he's had already this season 2 games with over 20 points, and this was in week 2 and week 3, so I think that these are going to start to come back. Even though this season's been a bit disappointing, especially with the injury, he's still averaging 12 points per game, which is totally fine. And if you go to PlayerProfiler.com and you look at his advanced stats, you're probably a bit grossed out. I mean, he's outside the top 50 for 90% of them, to be completely honest with you. But you look a little deeper and you see, he's still number 5 in points per target and number 11 in points per route run. I mean, he's a highly efficient player, and he's still getting the ball. I mean, he's still producing even the last couple of weeks with everyone healthy, especially in PPR. And he's the type of player that just shows up when it matters most at the end of the season, whether it be the playoffs or just these competitive games. He plays with so much heart that it's hard not to root for a guy like that. And when his value has taken such a big hit, I'm going to buy into him because it's not only a really good football player, but he's attached to one of the best offenses in the league.
Yeah, Deebo Samuel. Anytime you can buy a little bit low, this is probably more of a redraft possibility. I'm all in on the Deebo Samuel for the rest of the season. Give me those playoff wins. I'm going to go with another wide receiver here. Also in the West Division of their conference, Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is quietly having his best his best season since 2019. And he leads the Denver Broncos in targets, receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, and fantasy points. He's getting the job done. He's making crazy catches. He has a touchdown in 5 straight. And when you look at his playoff schedule, Detroit, New England, and the Chargers. Matchups that we like for the same reason why I'm looking to buy Russell Wilson to hopefully replace Joe Burrow the best that I can, is the reason why I want his number 1 pass catcher, Courtland Sutton. He's coming through in the clutch. So I like me some Courtland Sutton. Jason, go ahead and pick off who's going to be the next target for our contenders to buy.
Let's go Tony Pollard. And this it's a tough one. But this is, player profiler approved Tony Pollard. And he's been very disappointing this season. And finally, last week, he scores this touchdown, gets you 18 fantasy points, and he looks okay. And sometimes in fantasy football, we see this thing called the sell high mentality. And a lot of people who have been disappointed with Tony Pollard all season are going to see this week where he's starting to rebound, starting to play well, and be like, okay, I can use this as an opportunity to get off Tony Pollard because I think that this is it. But I don't think that's the case. I think Tony Pollard is actually starting to rebound. First off, I saw a stat, can't remember where it came from. I'm sorry. But for the first 8 weeks of the season, he only had, I think it was like 8 forced missed tackles, forced evaded tackles, whatever, made a tackle missed. Over the past 2 weeks, he has 10, right? So he's had, over the first 8 weeks of the season was not good, was not elusive. Over the past 2 weeks, he's starting to rebound. And then if you just think about it a bit more, you remember that Tony Pollard fractured his leg in the playoffs. It was in January of this year, he fractured his leg. And so we should have expected a slow build anyway. And so I'm seeing this touchdown. I'm seeing the good week. I'm seeing that he's still number 6 in breakaway runs and number 8 in yards created. And I'm going to go ahead and buy him, as not only is he starting to show some life, but this Cowboys offense too. I mean, Dak Prescott's playing so well, CeeDee Lamb's playing so well, and they have to make this playoff push as the Eagles are not losing this division. So they're working hard. You want any Cowboy you can get. Tony Pollard's a good one.
And I still think that the chance to buy Tony Pollard could be it's pretty nice. I like what I think I'd like his price.
Yeah.
I've kicked the tires on him in a few leagues, and it seemed like the price is good. I think I'm going to try to go on after him. But the running back that I'm definitely going after is someone that I really can't trade for because I've had him. I have so many Isaiah Pacheco's on all my rosters. But Isaiah Pacheco, I tweeted this out earlier in the week that if your league, the person who rosters Isaiah Pacheco's down on he had some bad games before the bye and the tough matchup against the Eagles, buy. His schedule remainder throughout the regular season and playoffs is so nice. It's exactly what we want to see. He gets Vegas this weekend, Green Bay, Buffalo to round off the regular season. All of those are top 10 matchups. And then in the playoffs, he gets New England, Vegas again, and Cincinnati. All of those are top 15 matchups. So he's got good matchups throughout. And we just saw him set the new high standard for rushing against the Eagles. The Eagles hadn't given up more than 60 yards rushing to any single running back. He came out, put up 91 total yards, 86 on the ground, 10.1 fantasy points, and was honestly the heart and soul of that offense, to call a spade on Monday night, with all the drops going around, with Kelsey not really playing all that great. He was the guy just running hard, running for first downs. He's reliable. And at the end of the day, the Chiefs now, I think it hasn't taken all that long. I think he's been this the whole year, I should say. But maybe the person in your league doesn't realize it, but he's the number one running back for the Chiefs. He's the guy that's getting all the touches. He hasn't seen less than 50% snap share since week 3. He's seen over 60% snap share 3 of the last 5. If you want to go all the way back to week 4, it's 61%, 60%, 62%. 55, 64, 68 and 62. I mean, he's on the field in the best possible moments, and he's showing he can catch the ball a little bit. He has a 6-reception game, a 4-reception game, a 3-reception game. So Isaiah Pacheco, you got to add him if you're a contender this year, because I think he's going to be one of those guys that you might see the projections each week. He's projected like a 10 or 11 points. You're like, oh, that's not great. But he just keeps exceeding. A guy over on Facebook, Brandon Adam, just sold A-Chain for Pacheco. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Pacheco is going to be Mr. Reliable for you down the stretch, where A-Chain seems like it's going to be a nagging injury throughout the rest of the year. They took him off for precautionary reasons, but still, you don't like to see a guy whose biggest red flag was, can he be durable in the NFL, not be durable. So we like what we see from Isaiah Pacheco. Jason, who's the next play that the contenders out there need to buy?
Good old Jay Jetta's Justin Jefferson. And it keeps just getting worse if you roster Justin Jefferson. And I just think that type of scenario where a few weeks ago it was reported by reliable sources that he would be returning week 11. And then he doesn't return week 11. And now we're coming back into week 12. They're like, oh, he's probably not going to return this week. In fact, reports are now starting to come out from Adam Schefter even that he's probably not going to return until after the Vikings bye week, which puts him into week 14, right around the fantasy football playoffs, which means it's time to buy him. And especially the contenders that have the luxury of already basically of clinching their playoffs, like they can afford to lose a couple games, go spend up for Justin Jefferson, because we talked about buying Joshua Dobbs earlier in the episode. This Vikings offense is really good. Justin Jefferson is still really good. I mean, there's a reason he was taken the first wide receiver overall, the first player overall in most drafts. And so you can get him for a very reasonable price right now. I feel like you could literally get him for like a Keenan Allen in redraft leagues. And so you've got to do it. You can, especially the teams that can afford to maybe take a couple losses if they have to pay up, because when he does return, it's going to be nice. He's going to play football. And the fact that they're taking the time in returning him just shows that he'll be like 110% when he returns, as opposed to the 90, 85% we would have gotten last week if they rushed him back. And so you've got to get Justin Jefferson. You've got to get the gritty man, Justin Jefferson, because I mean, you've never been able to before. So why wouldn't you use any opportunity you can?
I love that. And also too with Jefferson, he tweeted out, I don't care about your fantasy teams, and people are like, oh,
yep.
I think he does care about our fantasy teams because he's going to come back healthy.
Yes, exactly.
He's not going to pussyfoot around and get re-injured. He's going to come back healthy and dominate for our fantasy teams. So I think he does care about our fantasy teams. I think he just does like the Yahoos and the bozos that reach out to him. Like, don't do that, people. That's literally the worst thing you can do. The last guy on this list is Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford's quietly been a RB1, RB2 since he's gotten the role. Dating back all the way to week 2, 24.1, 19.1, 9.5, 11.1, 17.4, 4.9, the only dud on the slate, 12.7, 11.9, 11.9. He is no worse than running back 24 since week 2, only that one dud in week 8. He's the running back 1 for the Cleveland Browns, a team that likes to run the football a ton. And that's only going to go up even more if DTR remains at the helm. They're not going to air it out with DTR. So he should get a ton of opportunities. And when you look at the playoff schedule, he's got the 3rd most advantageous schedule in the playoffs. And if you need wins now, look who he's got on the slate. The Denver Broncos. The best matchup for opposing running back. So he's good now. He's ready to rock in week 12. He's going to be ready to rock in the playoffs. So if you're contending and your deadline has not passed, go ahead and see if you can get Jerome Ford, because I still think the vibe around Ford is he's just fine. I think you still get him for a 2nd. Still think you can get him for Roschon in a 3rd. Kendre Miller plus. I still think that teams are thinking of Nick Chubb in 2024 and beyond. They're still seeing Kareem Hunt getting touchdowns in 5 straight. I don't think the value has shot up nearly where it should be for Jerome Ford. So I am trying to buy me some Jerome Ford if I am contending in the playoffs. So here is the complete list of contending players that you need to target if you are playoff bound. Deebo Samuel, Cortland Sutton, Tony Pollard, Jerome Ford, Justin Jefferson, and Isaiah Pacheco. So the last segment here on this episode of the Trade Gods. First of all, thank you for rocking with us on Thanksgiving Eve. I hope all of you and your families have a warm and a lovely Thanksgiving Day full of family, food, and a foosball. But now we're going to talk about some targets. So these aren't sells if you're a pretender or a rebuild. These are targets if you are looking to rebuild. So you're not looking at the playoffs. You're probably the kaput's Dunzo in 2023. Here are some targets that you need to get. Now, Jason, who's the first player that they need to go after? I'm seeing a lot of Falcons on this board.
We can lump those all together, maybe. Let's just do that. We'll start with Falcons skill players. And I'll go ahead and I know that you had highlighted Drake London, so I'll let you have him, but I'll start with Kyle Pitts. And it's just really, I mean, overarching, I think this Falcons offense is only going to get better, whether that means they get rid of Arthur Smith, and have a different head coach that runs a little bit more of a pass-heavy, normal NFL offense, or Desmond Ridder just starts to get better. And at the very least, he was still at least giving Drake London and Bijan Robinson good games. And so the fact that they've taken dips is enough because they're still fantasy relevant, still getting the usage. But Kyle Pitts, still top 5 in air yards share, deep targets, average depth of target, yards per reception, and unrealized air yards he leads the league in, which is the one category that shows like, hey, he should be getting this, but he's not. And so there's still a lot left on the table for him. For Bijan, still getting the usage that we wanted from Bijan Robinson. He's number 1 in routes run. He's number 1 in route participation. He has a 14.2% target share. That's awesome for running backs. And even then, we're still seeing the kind of explosiveness that we saw in college. He's still number 6 in evaded tackles and juke rate. And so he's still really good running back, still getting tons of opportunity. Kyle Pitts is still a really good tight end, still getting tons of opportunity. And Drake London,
for me, he's a buy because if what you just said, if the quarterback is an upgrade, let's say it's Fields, let's say it's someone in the draft, whatever, Jaden Daniels is now going to be a first-round pick. JJ McCarthy is looking like Bo Nix. So, I mean, we could see 5 first-round quarterbacks. And if they don't fall, they don't have to fall into the top 3 to get one of those guys, is my point. A QB upgrade, a coach upgrade, both will immediately shut the buy window on a guy like Drake London, who's taken top 10 in the NFL draft. Had 866 receiving yards last year. He's on pace for more than that, or a little bit more than that this year. Again, more fantasy points per game. He still only has 6 career touchdowns. That's a number I could see shooting up going forward. And for me, it's just a matter of getting your hands on a super talented player like Drake London for not Drake London prices. I mean, the what you could get him for now, I got him for Jacoby Myers in a league. I think the price right now for Drake London is just too sweet to pass up. So if you're not looking at 2023 and you can stomach the Falcons for the rest of the year, but knowing that you have him in 2024 or beyond just makes a whole lot of sense. So for all the reasons you mentioned, Drake London is absolutely lumped in that with the possible coaching upgrade, possible quarterback upgrade, offensive upgrade in general, all that good stuff. So Pitts, London, Bijan, go ahead and buy because the window might not be open. There's a chance the window will not be open when you're telling yourself, okay, now I'm ready to buy. The window might shut right at that point because an upgrade to those 2 spots would send their values through the roof. So who's the next guy that you want to talk about here?
I'll go with Bryce Young, and I know that that's a hard one to talk about and discuss. Very, very polarizing player, especially here at Player Profiler. And I have honestly, maybe it was just my extremely low expectations. Even though he's had such a bad season, I've been mildly impressed. And I don't have to go into efficiency metrics or anything. It's just kind of the eye testing for me. I mean, one of the things was health concerns, but I mean, he's been sacked at an abnormal rate and still staying healthy. And he's still making some of these scramble plays that we saw at Alabama that made him a good quarterback. And so I think that this is going to be the bottom. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was extremely valuable at the beginning of this season, in rookie draft season especially, and he's fallen down to QB 16 in Dynasty. And I just think that it's only going to get better. And honestly, I talked about with Tony Pollard, we kind of should have seen it coming that it might take a bit given he was recovering from injury. But with Bryce Young, I mean, Frank Reich has never been good in football quarterbacks. And yet we thought that he would maybe be a whisperer for Bryce Young, a guy that we were already concerned about. And so to see things be bad, it's really not that concerning to me because I do think Frank Reich will be gone. And I do think this Panthers team will get better. You look at their cap space next year, they've got $57 million to play with. And I guarantee they've got some other fun ways to free up some money. I mean, the NFL cap room is so weird. And there's so many ways to free up some money that you already have $57 million. That's a good sign. And then we're already hearing up until the trade deadline, all the rumors about how they really want an alpha receiver coming down to Carolina. That's not just going to go away now that the trade deadline's gone. That's going to come right back when the trade deadline is reopened, when we're talking about next season. And they will bring someone in, whether it be a rookie in the second round because they don't have their first round pick, or whether it be a veteran that they can afford with their $57 million. But this Panthers team, this is as bad as they're going to be. I mean, I literally remember people picking them to somehow win the NFC South at the beginning of the year. So it's really bad right now. It's going to get better. And this is still, a generational prospect. Like, this was a guy who was really good in college, passed all the tests except for his size. And to me, he's kind of killed the size concerns. Like, he's like I mentioned, he's taken sacks so much. Like, it's an awful.
Yeah, the size hasn't been the reason why he hasn't been good.
Right. Exactly.
And the thing about Bryce Young is upgrades are coming. David Tepper, owner of the Carolina Panthers, he's hungry. He's hungry for wins. You're already hearing, I'm up here in New England where they're talking about moving on for Bill Belichick. David Tepper being a guy that might not take no for an answer, go after a guy like Belichick, which I would not like for Bryce Young.
No.
But just the fact that he's hungry could easily be the reason why they go get someone in the draft. They don't have a first-round pick, but they have other picks, and this wide receiver draft is going to be nice. And the free agent class, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, just to name a few, Hollywood Brown to name another. There's a ton of talent that could be brought into the Carolina Panthers fold. And if you're in Superflex 2 QB leagues, this guy was tried trading for the 104 a few months ago. It was bonkers. And that was Bryce Young more often than not. So just try to put yourself back in the past a few months, and then that might be enough to make you motivated to go get Bryce Young in your Superflex 2 QB leagues. The guy I'm going to talk about next is Antonio Gibson, fan favorite, one of my favorite players in the league. He's done with the Commanders after this year. He will no longer be a commie, which is great. Get him out of there because he's such a weapon that is being so underutilized. And this is a gut feeling. This is no speculation. I haven't seen reports, but Eric Bieniemy has proven enough, I think, to finally get himself a head coaching gig after this stint with the commies. And he might take Antonio Gibson with him. Like, can you see Eric Bieniemy taking the Chargers job, bringing Antonio Gibson with him, or taking the Patriots job, bringing Antonio Gibson, whatever? There's going to be a number of openings.
Honestly, Matty, I've always thought that he would take Ron Rivera's job, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Maybe he takes Ron Rivera's job and then he keeps him or whatever. But my point is he's a free agent. He'll be able to pick his situation. We already know that he's a receiving monster. But what people may not realize is he's great on the ground as well. Yeah. He's top. He has the second most yards per touch. He has the 5th highest juke rate, the 2nd most yards created per touch, and the number 1 production premium. Like, this guy gets it done. All he needs is some love. All you need is love. Love. Antonio Gibson, that's all he needs. That's all he needs is some love. So I want Antonio Gibson now, and then next year, just get ready to cash in. He'll be going into his age 26 season. So it's a year still. That's right, getting to the age apex, but there's no tread on these tires. I mean, he hasn't really gotten that much work. And the 6 feet 230, like, man, I just want to get him on my team, and I'll have him on my team until he stops playing football. Yep. So the next guy you're going to talk about isn't a guy at all. It's picks. So why should rebuilders go get those 2nd-round rookie picks?
Yeah, and I honestly, the more I'm thinking about it, I kind of just want it to be 3rd-round rookie picks. But really, just these rookie picks that the contenders especially aren't valuing right now. Like, they're ready to move on from. They're ready to get a piece that you probably have as a rebuilding team that you're ready to get rid of as well. So I think that this is a win-win scenario. This is the exact time of year where you can move these pieces at a decent rate. I mean, obviously the price has gone up as the season's gone on, but I mean, especially once fantasy football playoffs start, I mean, these picks get even more expensive. And I mean, we've seen Tank Dell, we've seen Puka Nacua, we've seen these rookie tight ends, all of these 2nd, 3rd round, 4th round rookie picks from this year, 5th round rookie picks from Puka Nacua's case, sometimes not even drafted, right? So just get as many as you can if you're rebuilding. Obviously, some teams might try to take advantage of you. And, obviously you probably already knew this, but you've just got to hammer it home. Get these rookie picks. And you might ask, what rookies are you targeting with these? I've got no earthly idea. They show up, who it's going to be at that time. And if you listen to Player Profiler, if you watch any of our shows, you're going to be in good hands. You're going to know who to pick, and it's probably going to work for you. So get those picks.
If you want to get familiar with some of the prospects, the Future Cast, the latest episode that came out with me and Theo OG Greminger, we had Cody Carpentier on. We did a 2024 2-round rookie mock, so you get familiar with some of those names. Yep. I'm just going to add to the pick conversation that if you're a rebuild, you definitely want round ones because there are franchise-changing wide receivers coming into the league. but the round 2 picks, you want those as well.
Mhm.
This is going to be a weird year where the number 1 running back in the class may not go to the 202. It's just that type of year where we have an elite tight end, potentially 4 or 5 quarterbacks that could be first rounders, and then so many good wide receivers. We're going to see a ton of wide receivers come off the board early and often, excuse me, in the NFL draft that you want to get these picks. And like Jason's saying, at this point of the year, contenders are ready to just shotgun off all of their second-round picks. Grab them up because you can use them to move up in your rookie draft. You can use them to take whoever's there. But again, if you need to find out, you're trying to learn a little bit of who the names are, who the players you want to see, go over to check out the last episode of the Future Cast. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the rookie tight ends. If you head over to PlayerProfiler.com, first of all, you got to get the all-in package. It's a holiday special, $10. 10. That's 2 cups of coffee at a Starbucks. You can't even get a Happy Meal at McDonald's for $10 anymore. But you can get the all-in package over at PlayerProfiler.com. And once you do that, you'll have access to all of our rankings. And what you can do is go to the Dynasty rankings, click tight end, and what you'll see is Sam Laporta, Dalton Kincaid. You'll see Luke Musgrave, Michael Mayer, all in the top 12.
Yep.
And you know what? Because it's our show, Jason, we can do whatever we want. I'm also going to lump Trey McBride in on these rookie tight ends. He's a second-year tight end, but I'm going to lump him in as well. That's another guy that's in the top 8 amongst Dynasty tight ends. Get him now because I still don't understand. I don't think that the community as a whole, or I should say the markets in your leagues as a whole, has truly come to grips with how talented this rookie class was, how important this tight end rookie class could be for the tight end landscape. So go pay the price. You're like, I can't pay that price, McBride. Do it. I don't want to pay that price for Laporta. Do it. Kincaid, do it. You want to go a little bit cheaper? Mayer, Musgrave, those guys are going to be cheap right now. And also, I want to give a shout out to Luke Musgrave. Tough motherfucker. What a tough son of a bitch. Lacerated kidney, I think it was. Has to go to the hospital, but played the rest of the game. He's on IR now. But he's been looking good in that offense. So I just got to give a big shout out to the rookie tight ends. Go get those guys. So if you're rebuilding, get your hands on Antonio Gibson, Bryce Young, any of the rookie tight ends, plus Trey McBride, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, the Atlanta Falcons going forward, and make sure you're getting those second-round rookie picks. You got to do it. And that's going to wrap up the special episode of Trade Gods, the Thanksgiving Eve edition. Jason, let the people know where they can find you.
Yes, and real quick before we do that, I do want to talk about the Top Dog Dynasty Dogfight hosted by Bettle. It's got me, it's got you, it's got Seth Dewald, it's got Matt Babich, and you can sign up for this app. It's Bettle, and it's free to play. You actually get a free $10 when you sign up. And this contest, the Top Dog Dynasty Dogfight, which we've already promoted on Twitter, you can go find that over there. But it's free to sign up. And you can take on me, you can take on Matty, you can take on Seth, you can take on Matt. And if you have the most points by the end of the season, whoever scores the most points, and we haven't had many consistent people sign up, you'll actually get a signed Saquon Barkley jersey. So make sure you do that. And we've had 3 weeks of this contest now, and no one has beaten, whether it be you, who won last week, me, who won 2 weeks ago, or Matt Babich, who won 3 weeks ago. No one's taken down any of the Player Profiler hosts yet, so make sure you sign up for that. That is rewards.playerprofiler.com/top-dog.
Get in on it. And also, we just want to say big shout out to Jason Allwine making the Scott Fish Bowl playoff.
Hey, you too, man. You did the best out of all of Player Profiler.
We're pretty good at fantasy football. We're pretty good at it. I'll just say it there. But you can catch me on X. I'm at Matty Kiwoom. You got Trade Gods every other Wednesday. The game plan on Saturdays. Futurecast is going to start ramping up here as the college season continues. Then we have the Hurdle Tuesdays and Wednesdays over at the Executives of Fantasy Football YouTube channel and the patreon.com/the Executives. Have a very, 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 very happy and joyful and exciting and wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody. We will see you in a couple weeks. He's Jason Allwine. I'm at Kiwoom. Together, we are the damn Trade Gods, and we'll see you soon. Peace.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you, allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.